Let's go back to some time ago and continue where we left off in the Metal Slug series. It's time for Metal Slug 2. Metal Slug 2 is a run-and-gun game developed by SNK. It was originally on the Neo Geo MVS arcade, but it has been ported to modern platforms. For this video, I'll be showing gameplay from the PSP version of the Metal Slug anthology, because it was the easiest to get running. I'll say this now, I won't be talking about Metal Slug X in this video because it's a different beast entirely. It has a bunch of new features that, in my opinion, makes it its own video. But that said, let's continue. In terms of story, Metal Slug 2 isn't different from before. It's still more than wanting to take over the world and someone has to stop him. In this game, the Peregrine Falcon Squad is now joined by Sparrow's intelligence unit members Eri Kasamoto and Fio Jeremy, ramping up the playable characters to 4. To be clear, gameplay is not affected by the character you choose, it's just who you play as. As you play, you learn that Morden has allied himself with the aliens to achieve world domination. Yes, I'm not kidding, aliens. However, it backfires on him as the Martians decide to take him as a prisoner. This causes the player and the rebel army to create an ad hoc alliance to stop the Martians. It's a bit silly, especially if it's being said to you, but as weird as this sounds, it does make for a unique and interesting plot for an arguably simple game. Let's move to gameplay. For the most part, there were no major changes from the previous game. It's still the same solid core gameplay loop. I'm probably making it sound boring and I apologize, but it's the tried and tested mechanics from the first game. That's not to say that the game didn't add anything. There are plenty of additions to the gameplay and I think they are great regardless of their effect to gameplay. We have 3 new weapons and no, it's not 3 new guns. Instead, it's spread between weapon types if that makes sense. We have the laser gun which makes it easy to kill rows of enemies, the firebomb that makes it easy to clear a large number of ground enemies, and the armor piercer, which is a new cannon for the Metal Slug that pierces through enemies at fast speeds. We also get 3 new vehicles. Yes, the tank isn't alone anymore, and the variety in vehicles is a welcome addition. We have the SV Camo, yes, a f***ing camo, with an attached Vulcan cannon. It has better movement at the expense of making the rider vulnerable to enemy fire. I don't know why, but now I want a camo with dual Kalashnikovs attached to it. It sounds stupidly cool to me. There's a Slugnoid, an armored frame that's really great at jumping. It's armed with twin Vulcan cannons, which are individually removed if the slug takes damage, and a cannon that is pointed downwards. Yes, this makes the slug a bit situational, but the game puts them in spots where you fight enemies below you, so that sort of mitigates that concern. The last added vehicle is the Slug Flyer, which is a jet fighter. It also has a Vulcan cannon and is armed with powerful aerial missiles. What makes it really cool is another player can wing walk on it, making it an elevated platform. Honestly, the jet is a no-brainer addition. The enemies have flying vehicles, so why can't we have one too? And it's just really cool to fly around and destroy enemies from afar. The final addition is the transformations, and this changes something in the character ranging from visuals to gameplay. Granted, you won't experience this much as they're kinda locked to certain stages. For example, there's mummification, which you can only get in stage 2, when hit by the purple attacks of certain enemies. It's purely detrimental, it slows down your movement speed, removes your melee attacks, and you can't use special weapons. Getting hit again by the purple attacks as a mummy will kill you, but thankfully antidotes are scattered around the level to restore you back to human form. The other transformation is fat, which you can get by acquiring a lot of food items in a short amount of time. This is more of a novelty, and isn't that bad. Your movement speed is slowed, but your attacks are larger and tend to cover a wider area. You return to normal on death, acquiring a diet powder canister, or enough time passes by without picking up food. These additions might not seem much, but they are some of the most memorable parts. I personally consider them some of the biggest additions as it affects the direction and tone of the game, but I'll get into that later. For now, let's move on to the levels and bosses. If you think the stages from the first game were already gorgeous and varied, then Metal Slug 2 raises the bar. Each stage is really different, and there's always something that makes them stand out. Maybe it's the variety in theme, the cool set pieces, or the wonderful presentation. It's like you're traveling all around the world. This in turn helps in building up the adventure, making it seem bigger and grander than it actually is. There are 6 stages and you might think, oh, it's the same as the previous game, it won't be that bad. And you aren't wrong, but the game can be deceptively short. Because of the stage designs and story flow, stage length is all over the place. The second half of stages are generally longer than the first half by a huge margin. Where the first game is on average a 15 to 20 minute game, Metal Slug 2 is more of a 25 to 30 minute one, and depending on how you see it, could either be a good or bad thing. As for the bosses, they are still the big f*** you machines, but crazier and certainly more creative. They're all fun fights, and while some tend to stay too long, they don't get stale. There's a lot more variety in attacks and forms to this game's bosses that will keep you entertained during the whole fight. It also helps that the boss designs are awesome. And, say it with me, there's no shoe in Karn. There's no boring tank on a f***ing platform, thank God. The music also get a step up in quality and variety. The previous game, in my opinion, has more action-oriented music. It's like a mix of war and fast-paced action movie music, and it just felt right. Like, it was really appropriate considering the game's theme and setting. For Metal Slug 2, there's more themes and styles in music, which helps you in making the stages memorable. And it certainly helps in making you feel as if you're traveling around the world. As far as I can tell, the same instruments or method was used, so the music still feels similar despite sounding differently to the previous game. Granted, music from the previous game is still used, but they don't clash with the new ones. In fact, they go together really well, which is a nice surprise. While Metal Slug 2 is a very cool game, this game is infamous for a certain thing. It has constant slowdowns and bugs. I personally only know one bug, but I can't get it working. Yet I've seen it used in speedruns. As for the slowdowns, I don't know why it happens. I just assume that it's due to too many things happening on the screen. You know, too many sprites. Is it a major deal breaker? I think that's up to perspective. As a run and gun game, it does affect gameplay and could cost you a run. But if you are playing on a version that allows virtually infinite lives, it's whatever. Now to get back to the part I alluded to several minutes ago. This is something I really want to point out. I'm not sure if you noticed, but all the additions to the game, the direction of the plot, the small details they added, there's a huge tone shift. For me, the first game was still trying to be serious. There's a serious take on war, the stages are set in places which we can easily imagine. Shit, Morden's design is based on infamous men in recent modern history. But Metal Slug 2 has a more comical tone to it. The addition of aliens, the more tongue-in-cheek humor, the expressive enemies, the comical animations, the crazy final boss fight, it removes the seriousness and it acts like it's aware. It's like they were cutting loose, trying to be relaxed in a way. It's like an experiment, a risk that paid off. The fact that the ridiculousness is present in the sequel says a lot. Because of this, I view Metal Slug 2 as one of the most important entry to the series. It has set a precedent in a Metal Slug game. I don't think I have much more to say. I've already gushed by a huge amount. Get this thing if you can. I don't know if you can get the original Neo Geo version, but as I said earlier, the game has been ported to modern platforms. The easiest one to get would be the Steam version, but honestly, I'd advise you to try to acquire the Metal Slug Anthology instead. It's a compilation of the series up to Metal Slug 6 and is available on both the PS2 and the PSP. Whenever I continue the series, I'll talk about Metal Slug X, so I hope you stay tuned for that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey there, if you're still here, from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm grateful that you watched the video till the end. By the way, the channel is a year old, which is a big thing for me. So to kinda celebrate, I have something planned for July which I'm really excited about. I do hope you guys stay tuned for that. For now, take care.